Monaco 64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So I'm doing something new here today. It's Saturday evening, July 18th. I'm using my iPhone today. I'm not on my computer. I'm in the living room as well. So I'll just wait for people to come on right now. Might be a bit shaky. I hope you can hear me well too. So we've got some people coming on right now. Let's see. Hi, Floyd. Floyd Palmer is here. Fivaskar is here. Good day. Edward Ryan, good afternoon, evening. Sounds fine. That's good. I've got the microphone on my phone. That's good. Great. So yeah, I just decided to do it from my living room with my iPhone, and also with I've got like a selfie stick that I'm holding here. Hopefully it's okay. And one thing that I wanted to talk about while people arrive to the live stream is the question of censorship. I think it's getting pretty bad, especially with what happened to Alex Jones and what's happening to other alternative media people. And I think that's really not a good thing at all, because we need to be allowed to express our opinions. Doesn't matter what your opinion is, right? So I think a lot of this is being done because of the elections. The mainstream, let's see, do you have any specific topic today? No, I'm just taking questions. I'm talking, yeah, I guess this topic about censorship, internet censorship, is something that is a bit concerning, because I think it's worse than people think. Because I've realized that if I go now on YouTube and try to search old videos of Alex Jones from years ago, I won't find any. I'll take my glasses off here. I can read better like this. I won't find any, and that's concerning. That's like quiet. That's kind of shutting up the alternative view of things. And I think it's a really bad thing. It's not just about censorship. I think it's about business as well. I think, how can I say, the mainstream media is scared that they're losing their grip, that more and more people go on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, or Steemit or DTube. But Steemit and DTube, they can't censor that. And that's why I think the blockchain is important. I think how much longer can the Fed hold on to the 10-year yield under 3%? Well, I think what's happening in the markets right now is helping the Fed, because there's a lot of crisis, emerging markets, there's crisis in Europe, and that for now is tending to help the old philosophy of buying safe haven. A lot of people still consider the Treasury safe haven. How long we're going to get? Well, I think we were under around 8 trillion when Obama came to power. We're now at 21 trillion. It's going to get quicker and quicker, the increase in debt. So I'm going to get this closer here. So my glasses are kind of very focal. I'm not used to doing this on the phone. Try to read your questions as best as possible, though. So, yeah, as I was talking about, I think the censorship is a bad thing. It's gonna, and they're already doing the shadow banning, right? And that's not good. Someone asked me today, I made a video this morning, and they said, Mario, I've noticed your videos are not getting as many views. I have to be honest. I noticed that end of July, beginning of August. Now it's improved, but you would think that with almost 20,000 subscribers now, I would be regularly getting 4,000 or 5,000 views. I do sometimes, but a lot of times I'm still just getting 2 or 3,000 views. Yeah, I don't use BitChute. I use Steemit and DTube. I've also applied for Voice. I think Alex Jones is using Voice. I applied to use that. I think, as I was saying earlier, the blockchain is big. I think Alex Jones and InfoWars should look at something in the blockchain. I think there's big opportunity there. They could have They could have an InfoWars coin and put it on the EOS blockchain. I think that would be a good idea for InfoWars, and there won't be any censorship there. I just missed there here. Oh, Mario, I give you a thumbs up at the beginning of the video, and by the time the video ends, it's gone. Oh, that's strange. I didn't know that. The other thing to do maybe is to click on the little bell when you subscribe to my channel, so you get notified of my videos. The other thing I've noticed as well, what YouTube does, because I go on YouTube a lot. I listen to a lot of videos on YouTube. Have a lot of people I like listening to. And a lot of times when I go on my home page, I get all these suggestions of channels that I've never subscribed or listened to, which is weird. Dan from Ohio. Hi, Dan. How are you doing? Yeah, so it's not good. I noticed though that President Trump has come out, I think yesterday, with a tweet about internet censorship. So hopefully things will improve. Let's see here. Someone is asking me, Mario, can you speak a little about your past job? I don't know much about your profile. I like your video content. Yeah, basically I worked in banking and finance for over 20 years. The last the first few years when I started out in Switzerland, Geneva, I worked for a private bank. I started out in the back office, and then and then I trained. I got an offer to come to London to work for a brokerage house. I was a bond broker, treasuries, government debt. And then I moved into the same market, government debt, but in the futures market. And I worked as a futures and options broker for over 20 years until 2012. And that's my background. And my clients were not private clients. They were institutional clients. By institutions, I mean like the banks, the brokerage houses, mutual funds, hedge funds. So I used to speak to these guys. So I find that many suggested videos disappear for days at a time. M South Philly, Mario, thank you. Keep up the good work. Oh, thank you. Just wanted to ask you guys, is the super chat coming up on this? Because I can't see it, and I'm using my phone. I'm not using the PC today, but it should be coming up. Yeah, that's the other thing I like to say. I appreciate everyone who contributes to the channel via Patreon or via, just sending a PayPal contribution or even cryptocurrencies. And also now I'm doing the Monaco 64 store, which I think is quite an interesting, venture. I've had people buy things there. The End of Fed mugs are quite popular. Some of the Billy mugs are popular as well. And there's some other stuff there. And I appreciate the support. To be honest, YouTube has stopped, how can I say, demonetizing my videos. I'm getting the green token every time now, most of the time. The only thing is that I think they're limiting my scope for people to see my videos, because with 20,000 subscribers, I would think that I would be getting a lot more views. So I think they're kind of censoring me, but not directly because they can't. And that's what's happening. Johnny Ringo, morning. It's Mario, not Marco, but it doesn't matter. Do you like sushi? Yeah, I love sushi. I but I love sushi, but I eat more. I'd like right now. It probably better to eat sashimi for me because rice isn't great for me because I try to stay off the carbohydrates because I was diagnosed a few years ago with type 2 diabetes. I've kind of overcome that diabetes with my diet, and so I have to try to stop. I have to try to cut down on the carbohydrates, and rice has a lot of carbohydrates. And it's funny, if you guys go how I reversed type 2 diabetes on YouTube, there will be a video of mine there. It's got almost 150,000 hits, which is really amazing. I did it last summer, just about type 2 diabetes, and it's probably my best viewed video, which is funny. I just seen that some people have made some donations. Lord Humongous, thank you for the $5 donation. Also, let's see, Johnny Ringo, $9.99. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. I'm really concerned about internet censorship. Not for me, but maybe it will come. But it's just that it's wrong that people who have different views, like me, like other people, are not given the platform to speak. And I think that's bad. And that's a sign of that the globalists are getting more and more desperate. Hopefully, this is in the medium to longer term is not a medium term, short term is not a good thing, but it could be also a symptom that things are really getting bad for them. Let's see here. Danny Djokovic, Monaco 64. I spent yesterday going to Diamond District in New York and various pawn shops. They're offering $200 less per ounce for 24 karat gold and $2 less for silver. Wow, that's a steal. Hi, Mario. A book to look into, The Age of Anomaly by Andrei Polgar. I will look into that. That's the other thing I like to say. It's good that you guys comment and tell me about your ideas, books that you've read, because a lot of times, I will look into it, I'll read into it, and it gives me a lot of ideas to talk about. The other day, someone spoke about Gold, the Money, the Great Hoax by Mero Jenkins, and that was a great book, I thought, and I haven't finished reading it yet. Sushi makes me sad. Gur OG, my thought is my thought is we're going the head first into a new timeline, a new frequency is coming our way. Yeah, I think so as well, Gur. I think people are waking up, and what we're seeing in terms of internet censorship is the last hurrah for the globalists. They're not going to win. They're not going to win. Let's see here. Who else? I like your videos. You're one of those calling for the end of the fiat currencies. I don't see the US dollar going away or falling anytime soon. The people in power want to stay in power. That's true, but it can't last forever. Fiat currencies, I think it was Voltaire who said that 300 years ago or so, I'm not sure. He said that they always go to their intrinsic value, which is zero, fiat currencies. What is your take on India on micro and macro level? I haven't really looked too much into India, sorry. I did a video about 2 years ago about India when they demonetized the banknotes. But to be honest, I haven't been following India too much. But India could be could get into trouble with all the other emerging markets getting into trouble. But to be honest, I haven't looked closely at it. Frank. Monaco silver was going down this week on a year's low. When do we reach the cost price of silver? Do you think that could happen? I think we must be pretty close to it. And silver as well is quite expensive to mine. And the thing about silver is that there's very few pure silver mines. Silver is usually mined along with copper. Is Turkey the black swan? Probably not. I think, Brazil is looking pretty bad too. But I think it's difficult to say what the black swan is. I mean, in '08, it was the subprime crisis, something people didn't know about. But it could be. I think the thing about Turkey, I was reading today, the black swan could be that Europe is highly exposed to Turkey. And why is that? Well, because with the ECB monetary policy of negative interest rates and no return, a lot of the European banks, they've invested hundreds of billions in higher yielding Turkish paper. So that could be the black swan, that Turkey leads to the collapse of Europe. We'll have to see. Someone says here, I think JPMorgan is close to stop short selling its paper. I think so. I mean, markets are frustrating, but as I've said before, gold and silver are insurance. So there's a guy here who's, people are talking about food, steak, and sushi. Well, tonight we ordered some Chinese takeout. So I had the duck, the crispy duck. So that was nice. Nathan Jones, Monaco, did the BBC journalist ever reply to you? No, she hasn't yet. And I also tweeted her, but she hasn't replied to me. And she hasn't, I invited her to become a connection on LinkedIn. She hasn't accepted it yet. Someone here says, love your, Philibert. Love your videos. Your thoughts on the disproportionate amount of Jews in banking? Well, I think that's because historically, in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, the Catholic Church, the Christian churches were very much against usury. So the only people allowed to do banking were Jews. I think that's helped a lot. And I think that's where they got their head start. It's only because of that. But there's not only Jews in banking, there's a lot of other ethnic groups that are in banking, and none of them are honest, in my opinion, right now. We don't have honest banking anywhere in the world by any group of ethnic group or religious group. Even the Muslims, their Sharia law banking. I remember this because I sold my house 3 years ago, and the guy who bought it was a Muslim guy, and he took a Sharia law mortgage. But the only difference with his mortgage and a normal mortgage is that instead of calling the interest an interest, they call it a rent. So it's just a technicality. I hope that answers your question about the banking. Tony Savage, what are your views on Hindus in the workplace? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Could it be, are you talking about, because I remember when I worked at ABN AMRO Bank here in London, Red Snapper, thank you for your donation. I highly appreciate that. And yeah, thank you very much. Well, when I worked at ABN AMRO, in London, ABN AMRO Bank, and I worked in the futures department. Our back office, they had to train people who came from India to, They had to train these people who came, and these people were going to take over their jobs. They're going to do their back office job from India. And you might say, why would you want to train someone who's going to take over your job? The thing was that they were going to be made redundant, and their redundancy packages, they wouldn't get it if they didn't train these people. But I don't have anything against Indians or Hindus coming doing those jobs. What the problem is the people running these big corporations, like in big banks, for doing that. You see, because they're greedy and they don't really, how can I say, look after the people that work for them in their own community. So I don't have anything against them, and I wouldn't. If I were them, I would try to get on the program and try to get that job. I don't blame it at all. Of course, the reason they get that job is because they're very, they don't charge as much, and they don't have to pay them as much for them to do the same job. And I think that's still going on. I spoke to a friend of mine a few weeks ago who plays golf, and he works for an big insurance company here in London, and he says the same thing is happening right now in his firm. And it's an English insurance company. Let's have a look here. Moneko64, have coffee today. Did Moneko not used to this pace of speech? No, the reason I'm talking faster is because I'm doing this live stream on my phone, and the chat that comes through, it goes through very quickly. I'm not on my PC, so I have to try to read it quicker. I haven't had any more coffee than usual. I usually have two cup of coffees a day, instant coffee. I don't really like lattes and things like that. I just like the plain Nescafe coffee. What percentage of gold should you put into your portfolio? As much as possible. For me, you have to decide for yourself. Some people say that 10% in times of crisis is enough to cover the losses you have on your fiat money portfolio or stock portfolio. You need to decide that for yourself. Having gold and silver is just like saving, but saving should be safe, right? It's like money. But stock market investments, that's not safe. That's not saving. That's, I would say, investment and speculation. Rick H., how would straight up gold work as money? Would you have to set a value? Wouldn't the value have? No, it's really easy. People, it's just an exchange rate, a ratio, how much you're going to pay for a gram of gold for, how many grams of gold for a banana, or how many grams of silver. And the market decides. It's really simple. It's the law of supply and demand. What gets tricky is when people give grams of gold a name, like the dollar, and then they can put a number to it, and then the politicians can change the value, right? But all it is, it's like it's like barter, right? So you decide, will you take an ounce of gold for, a 10-year-old car? You might, and the market decides for itself. Humans, adapt. So it's not difficult, really. It will take a little while, of course, because people have been, used to the fiat money values. But it's just a ratio between, two commodity money, gold or silver, and goods and services and other commodities. That's all it is. It's like the price of silver in gold. Right now you need 80 ounces of silver for gold. That's the exchange rate. And that's how it's worked out. So it'll be the same thing. How many gallons of oil can you get for an ounce of gold? I don't know, maybe 30. And that's how it's done. That's why I think we should stick to grams. Dirty D, when should the price decrease in gold because mines shut down under 1,000? Well, I think right now the price, for mining, is that's pretty much. I think it's mines are not making any money right now where we are. That's why I don't think it's going to go much lower. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's around 1,200 to 1,300. Some mines, of course, will be cheaper to produce, but some will be higher. But on average, I think we're right around even below the cost of production. Lord Humongous, take a trip to Colorado, Mario. I will treat you like a king. I'd love to. I mean, I've never been to Colorado. And hopefully the Department of Homeland Security will allow me to come, because I've noticed they've been looking at my my profile on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, it's like the Facebook for business. They tell you who's been looking at your profile, and I've had the Department of Homeland Security looking at my profile. Luis Cuevas, Monaco, I think gold has capitulated on the, hold on the charts, but I think silver can see some further downside. What do you think? I think like you as well, but it's difficult to call tops and bottoms. But the action on Thursday, when overnight we dropped to 1160 and then rebounded, and the close yesterday was quite good, 1185. So it does look like a capitulation action. And I think silver as well has capitulated. So I think they would both, if gold goes up, silver will go up too. No, JJ, I haven't read the book, The Bitcoin Standard. Have a look at it though. Lord Humongous, I deposited my slave paycheck on Friday at JPMorgan. They were having ATM glitches. Yeah, I've read about this. There are ATM glitches here in the UK as well. Yeah, JPMorgan. I used to have my account with Citibank here in the UK, but they started asking so many questions that I just closed the account with them. Now I just have an account with NatWest. I know it's part of RBS, but I've had that account for a long time. Yeah, that's what JPMorgan said. At the Peugeot hearings in Congress, gold is money, everything else is credit. JJ, Mario, you posted a link with a man the other day that didn't pay income tax. Can you explain how he's doing that? Oh yeah, that came from that was the same guy who wrote the book Money, the Merrill Jenkins, right? I think what he says is that if you don't file your income tax, if you never file your income tax, then you're not liable to pay any income tax. He said the problem comes when you file your income tax and you file it incorrectly, you understate it, then you're in trouble. But I don't know more about it. There's a lot of people. Look up, I think Erwin Schiff. He was Peter Schiff's dad. He did the same thing. So I'm not a specialist on that, but yeah, it's basically the income tax in the U.S. is voluntary. Yeah, B. Mitch, going back to the offshoring jobs, all the regulations. Yeah, I mean, I think offshoring is part of the globalist agenda. The big corporations don't care about the people in their communities. They just want to go where they can get the cheapest, they call it human resources, right? And I think that's what Trump is trying to pare back, the globalization. The District of Columbia is treason. Irwin was a hero and died in prison for his conviction and knowledge. Yeah, I've listened to some of his videos. It's very corrupt. Rick H. Physical gold only would have to be dangerous. Would you still need banks to borrow from and hold your gold? Well, and also silver, I think you can have silver. Yeah, honest banks, usually if you have a lot of gold, they're supposed to store it. They're not supposed to lend it unless you tell them they can lend it. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with banks. The problem is that our banks now are dishonest, but you know, and they've bought out, they've kind of hijacked government. Nodes missing in action. Click the like button from Mario. Yeah, that's right. And I'd like to thank already all the donations on Super Chat. That's really nice to see that. Corruption is everywhere. RR. Yeah, the video today I spoke about Big Pharma. I think Big Pharma is just as bad as banking. Really bad. And one thing that I didn't know and I learned a few years ago is that Big Pharma in the US, they've got immunity. Basically, Congress gave them immunity in the late 80s from prosecution by the justice system. So no one can sue Big Pharma. And that's why, you know, there's a prescription drug problem everywhere, I think, even here in the UK, I know in the US as well. You know, everyone takes prescription drugs. Doctors try to push all these prescription drugs just because, you know, you can't sleep one night and they say, oh, take these sleeping pills. I don't take any prescription drugs, ever. When I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they gave me, you know, I forgot now, the drug for type 2 diabetes. But I started taking it, but then I stopped and I realized that I could control it through my diet. So I forgot even the name of it. Peter Schiff company was brought out by Soros. Yeah, the other company that was bought out by Soros partly was Gold Money. You know, what's his name? James Turk. Metformin, that's right, Omar. I was having metformin. And I spoke earlier, I told that the best video I've ever made in 2.5 years, well, not the best, but the one that has the most view, is one I made last year about how I reverse my type 2 diabetes without taking medication. I've got, I think, about 150,000 views on that video. You can search that, how I reverse type 2 diabetes. Gold Money is owned by Soros. It's partly owned by the Soros Fund Management. Yeah, Soros Asset Management. Yep. I don't think they have 100% ownership, but James Turk sold out. That's why I don't really, I have an account there, but I don't keep much there. What would be the minimum for if you were starting to stack now? What would be the minimum for silver? I mean, if I was going to buy an ounce of gold, which is like 1,000 pounds, I would probably buy 250 pounds worth of silver. So I guess 25% of what I put in silver. And if I wasn't going to buy any gold, you know, just buy the silver. How do you have your assets allocated for the next recession? Well, what I've done in the last few years is I got out of all debt, all mortgage, and I keep holding on to my physical gold and silver. I do have some cryptocurrencies, and yeah, and that's it. Thanks, Dan Gombert, for the super chat donation. And just to the guy who asked, the person who asked about silver, I've got here a few like 1964 quarters, and I think they're great, especially if you're in the US. I know I'm in the UK, but I still love these coins. 1964 silver dollars. You can find them on eBay or, through a dealer. It's much easier in the US to buy them. But I've got a coin dealer here in London who gets a hold of these, and I buy it regularly. The half the Kennedy half dollar and the quarters, silver quarters. They're 90% silver. I meant as far as ounce terms. Would you feel comfortable at 200, 500, 1,000? Well, I guess it depends, but I definitely want to have more than 200 ounces. I took some ibuprofen for back pain. Well, sometimes I do take a ibuprofen if I have a back pain from playing golf, but it's a one-off, right? Or if I get a really bad headache, I'll take some ibuprofen. But it's not something I take daily. Comic Commando. Manako, I like your planning because I'm almost 40, and thanks to my parents and grandparents, I understand the difference between actually outright owning something versus that. Yeah, of course. That's right. I think some people don't understand what owning property means. The other day, someone asked me a question, one of the comments, because I said I own my house outright. And they said, oh, how much rent do you pay? So, I mean, if you're renting a place, you don't own it, right? So yeah, we take it for granted that everyone knows what owning means. But if it's encumbered by debt, unless you can, how can I say, service that debt, you could lose that property. Yeah, the thing about the junk silver, I've heard that there's a story once that someone was said that in the 50s, a working person could eat well with a dime, a silver dime a day. So that's another thing to think about. I think right now, with silver so low, the silver dime isn't worth that much. I've got some of the silver dimes as well. They're really nice coins. All the old silver coins are great. Mario, what are your favorite income producing assets? Well, right now, it's myself. That's the best. I think it's the best producing income asset that produces income. I don't really trust. I see a lot here in the UK that you can buy these income bonds. Income guaranteed bonds yielding 12 or 9%. I never trusted these things, so I'll stick to trying to create income myself. I know that gold and silver don't create an income, but money also doesn't create an income unless you lend it, right? Maneka, what banks are most likely to go bust in the UK? Probably not RBS because it's partly owned by the government, so they won't allow it to go bust. But I would say any of them, pick and choose. Santander, Barclays, HSBC. There's not too many banks left in the UK. Do you advise is the district treason? Do you advise buying 100-ounce silver bars and agree with one per head per household? If the only silver you're going to buy is a 100-ounce bar, I would say no because if you want to have a little bit of silver that is divisible. I do have a 50-ounce bar, I think, silver bar, but I also have loads of coins, junk coins. I have like a 2 kilo bar. So just pick and mix, really. Use your I don't know, just depends on the circumstances. But if you have enough money to buy quite a bit of silver, why not? Yeah, that's what Shambo said. 100 ounce isn't fungible. It might not be, but if someone's 10,000 ounces, for example, it's all right to have a few 100 ounce bars. But if you're only gonna have 200 ounces, I think it's better to have maybe a 10 or 20 gram bar and then the rest coins. Dan Gombert, I heard Jamie Dimon said 10 years will go to 5. I doubt it will stay much. The District of Columbia is a corporation. I know that. So is the City of London is a corporation. The Vatican is probably a corporation as well. The three cities. Nunia Business. There's a picture of Christine Lagarde with Philippe de Rothschild wearing a Baphomet necklace. Yeah, these people are into that Baphomet. Comic Commando, thoughts about universal basic income? Do you think it'll gain more adoption? I think it's a stupid, silly idea. Getting something for nothing. I don't believe in that. So, you know, in the blockchain, some people are getting airdrops. I've been getting airdrops, but the only reason I'm getting the airdrops is because I initially invested in EOS, for example, and I'm getting these airdrops, and they're free, right? But I did pay for the EOS. But universal basic income, I think it will destroy society, like you said, or who's going to pay for it? Someone's got to pay for it. It's one of the best pieces of advice my dad and my mom gave me. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money should be a representation of wealth and effort. That's what money is. Thought about all the falling currencies. Well, I think it could be, even though we've had in the past emerging market currency crisis, it could be the canary in the coal mine for the coming fiat money collapse. And why do I say that? Well, because it usually starts in the periphery. And the last one to go will be the dollar, of course, because it's the at the center of the system. But I don't know. It could be just a scare, but it's not looking good right now. Brazil, Turkey, even Italy, even though Italy is part of the euro, but their bonds are looking more and more shaky. Nunez business. I try to stay away from being religious, but I pray that you know Yeshua the Messiah, Mario. You are one of the few good guys left. Well, I don't really like to talk about my religious beliefs, but yeah, I try to stick the. I don't want to become like a religious preacher or anything, but thank you anyway for that. How come the Swiss franc is so strong compared to the rest of the other currencies? Maybe. Well, yeah, I've noticed that the Swiss franc is stuck around a dollar, so 1 to 1. Maybe because the Swiss franc has always been seen as a safe haven currency, even though it's not anymore. They sold a lot of their gold, and the Swiss National Bank they're huge investors in the FANG stocks. But I think it's more of a geopolitical thing. Maybe a lot of the other thing could be a lot of the emerging market countries with their currencies collapsing. A lot of the wealthy people, like in Turkey or in Brazil and other emerging markets, they're moving their money to Switzerland. So that could be why the Swiss franc is a bit. But I would say the Swiss franc is just as bad as all the other fiat currencies. QE4 again. Yeah, I think they are. They're gonna have to do QE4. What's happening with the rest of the world with the dollar? It's gonna hurt even more the U.S. economy and exports. The other thing that looks interesting, I heard someone talk about, is I think his name is Wayne Jett. He was interviewed on YouTube. I forgot who interviewed him now, but he said that the reason why Trump is doing all the tariffs and the trade wars is to try to balance trade, and because you need balanced trade to go on a gold standard, and that could be interesting. Moosehead, it looks like Jair Bolsonaro is doing well with an early lead for the presidential election in Brazil. Do you have any views of his domestic and economic policies? I have a Brazilian passport. I was born in Brazil. I'm supposed to vote, but I've never voted. And they're supposed to fine you if you don't vote. But I'm not going to vote again. I don't think any of them are any good, these politicians. From what I heard is that Lula, even though he's in jail, he's still leading in the polls, but he might not even be eligible to run. So it's a big mess, I think, in Brazil. And I think the currency is going to get weaker there, unfortunately. Our people are also leaving Brazil. Well, they've been leaving Brazil for decades now. I saw that article. It's nothing really surprising. Yeah, Jordan, I agree. Inflation in Brazil, sorry, US is more like 10%. Unemployment is more like 20%. Aaron Levy. Hi, Aaron. Nice to see you here. Better late than ever, of course. Let's see. Why don't you like Lionel does and vote for yourself? Well, the reason I don't vote is that I actually think all this politics, the so-called democracy, is just like a theater. I'd rather have economic freedom than anything else, because if I was left alone economically, why would I need a politician, right? Jordan King, the central banks are lying. Their statistic methods are trash. I know. It's all rubbish. It's all a Potemkin village, right? It's all a facade. One day it will all implode. Yeah, Ron Paul is the only politician that I like, because what does he want to do? He doesn't want to do anything. He wants to keep government really tiny. Lord Humongous, enjoy your weekend, Mario. Going to Red Rocks Amphitheater tomorrow to see the English band Colt, the Colt. Go figure, low. Great. Nice to see you here, Lord Humongous. Have a great weekend in Colorado. So yeah, tomorrow morning I'm playing golf quite early at 8 o'clock. Rue Fernando, hello from Oregon. How does the derivatives market affect the price of gold? Wouldn't real buying and selling of gold affect the price rather than speculation? No, I mean the derivatives market or the paper market is like the tail wagging the dog, right? There's trillions of dollars trading in paper and paper gold and silver gold, and they control the price right now through the COMEX and LBMA. So what do? Well, they basically they short. Let's say JPMorgan has 10 ounces of gold, but they'll go in the futures market and sell 1,000 ounces, even though they only have 10 ounces. And that's how they, affect the price. They use the leverage. The derivatives allows for leverage, and derivatives are used to manipulate all the other markets, like the bond markets, the stock markets, and financial derivatives are a relative new thing. Patrick, thank you for the donation, and thanks for the wishes for the golf. Yeah, derivatives up until the early mid '80s, the only derivatives you really had were on commodities, which was understandable. Farmers, producers, they want to hedge the price for their crops and production, but it was only after the early '80s, with the closing of the gold window, with the dollar almost collapsing in 1980, that they started developing financial derivatives. And they're used by the central banks, by the big banks, to manipulate the bond prices, interest rates, gold, stocks. So yeah, derivatives is the big. Without the derivatives, the fiat money system would have collapsed already, and that's why there's like over a quadrillion in derivatives, nominal derivatives out there. It's going to keep increasing if they want to keep the fiat money system going. So that's derivatives. Yes, Aaron, because they have created a lot of paper money. And if they didn't have, I worked in the bond market derivative futures. I traded a lot of treasury futures. And I can tell you the banks they can manipulate the price of the underlying treasury through the futures. For example, I remember trading in 1,000 lot 10-year futures, and that actually controlled about 100 million in treasuries, but they only had to have like 5 million in cash to buy that or sell that. So that's how they do it. Derivatives is, without the derivatives, they wouldn't have been able to keep the fiat money system going. A lot of people say that the reason why they can manipulate the markets because of electronic and digital trading. But I would argue that it's the derivatives, because it's not a real market. It's the tail wagging the dog. And right now, thank you, Susan Chappell, for the donation. I appreciate it. And right now, the big banks, the central banks, they use the derivatives market to control the underlying market. And that's what happened in '08. Derivatives completely broke, and they had to bring it back. That's why actually I know some of you don't trust Jim Rickards, and I'm not too sure about him either. But one thing that he said, and I agree with him completely, Jim Rickards said that derivatives should be banned. All financial derivatives. You see, they didn't need futures on currencies, derivatives on currencies before 1973, because it was on a sound money system. Currencies were fixed, right? So there was no foreign exchange trading before the fall of Bretton Woods and the closing of the gold window. Smiley's people, when do you realize the whole system is rigged? When did you realize? And that when you got out? Well, I actually realized the system was rigged. It's funny. Do you remember the 1998? There was the Asian crisis in '97, and there's the Russian, default in 1998. LTCM went bust in '98, and in the summer of '98, the stock market S&P Dow was crashing big time. And I remember watching at work, they had CNBC on and everything, or Bloomberg TV. I think it was CNBC. And they showed President Clinton. He was at a press conference and was standing on a stage. And all of a sudden, George, I think Stephanopoulos, he worked at the White House for him, he came over and I read his lips. He said, the stock market is okay. The stock, I could read his lip. He said the stock market is fine now, and I could see Clinton looked at him and went thumbs up like that. When I saw that, I realized these guys are interfering in the market. And of course, I've read about the PPT, the Working Group on Financial Markets, that actually President Reagan started out after the '87 crash. And that's how I knew about it. But it started out like late '90s, early 2000s. YK, hello, Monaco64. I'm all for small government and less tax, but how are we going to pay for healthcare, public services like fire service, road, etc.? Well, all I have to say about that, YK, how did they pay for those things before 1913? Can you guys see me? Because it looks like my how did they pay for all those things before 1913? Government was really small. There's no income tax either. So, and who says that the government has to look after your health? I think people should look after their own health. So, guys, I'm gonna call it a day now. We've been here for an hour. I'd like to thank everyone who participated. The picture's frozen. Can you hear me now? I think it's okay now, isn't it? Sorry. So I will keep going a little more. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, YK, that's what I say. I don't think, I think I'd rather keep my money myself than have the government be involved. And go back to before. How did they build roads before governments built roads? Privately. All right, everyone. Then I guess the image is back. As I said, it's been an hour already, so I'll take one or two more questions, and then I'll call it a day for now. Are you allowed to own firearms? In the UK, I think you can, but you have to get a license. JJ Mario, don't go do an all-day marathon. Well, I'm getting tired now. No, thanks everyone, and you're welcome. Have a good rest of the weekend. I might even do another one tomorrow night, another one of these. I think I might. So I'll let you know if I will do another one tomorrow. It will be around 8 or 7:30 p.m. London, which is about 2:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So or maybe a half an hour later. So keep an eye out for me. Thanks everyone. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye. Just turn this off now. Let's see.